I'm going to talk with Sean Gallagher today about social media and Pilates and Sean's history with social media. So I'm here with Sean Gallagher.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
So today I'm going to be talking with Sean about social media and the internet, basically. So Sean, before we get to social media, how did you use the internet originally to promote the Pilates?
Well, in 1995, I had a website made. Before, that was it was very expensive. It was almost $20,000 to do it, but it was for the teachers. So there was a listing you could go and find a teacher. If you were guild certified, you were included in that list. So, before there was social media where you could go and do those things, there was the internet, and, you could do things like that on your webpage, but, it was a lot of extra work that had to be done, and that wasn't something I knew how to do.
Okay.
I've since gone and taken some courses and stuff, but at the time I didn't know how to do that, so I had to pay somebody.
Uh-huh.
And that's what we did. I spent the time, and the money to sort of build that, and then there was also one of the things, the guild had newsletters, so the newsletters were put online. So there was ways for people to find out information and join in and be part, find teachers, and then also teachers to list their places and sites so that they could do that. And I think there was, you could pay, it was free for everything. Then if you wanted a special push out, you had to pay it, you paid a little bit.
Like a little ad?
Yeah, well, or like a feature, you're like bolded and that you could click your thing and do all that stuff. So there was the general, everybody got it, and it was your address and your phone number. And then if you wanted more, there was a little bit extra. So I try to do things that, to help pay for the service.
So when I was a young teacher, I used to go on your website and I would look at it and I would scroll on it and I'd be like, that's cool. I wish I could go to that studio and train there. And then I didn't until I did eventually. Yeah.
You could have any time.
I know, but I just was nervous, I guess. So I didn't.
Right. So.
But I remember your website. I remember, going to look at it.
Another thing that I did that most people don't realize is that for almost from the very beginning or very early on, there was a list of articles, archival articles. It didn't have the articles themselves, but the titles and the dates and, where it was from, basically. And it was very extensive.
Very. Well, it's still there.
It's still there. So if anybody wants to go, they can go look at it.
Yeah.
And there was two sections. There was a section that was about Pilates, and then there was a section for teachers and guild and that type of thing. So, it was a little bit of both. So you could go and do, general information, and then you could find out about the guild certified teaching and training. And then there was how to find a teacher. And then there was a forum. I had started a forum just for teachers. So they could go in and talk and discuss things without, and it's like what we, if you do a Facebook group now and you only let, like the Facebook group that I started is only for teachers, and if you want to join, you have to show that you have a certificate as a Pilates teacher, otherwise you can't join.
So that was you started a forum on your website in the 90s,
yes.
Before Facebook forums were a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
Just for teachers.
Yeah.
And they were guild certified. It wasn't like, there weren't really that many other teachers out there because there weren't any training programs back then.
Yeah. So
very few.
Because your article list, some of my friends and I have gone through it, and looked for articles. We'd look for the title and the author and stuff, and try to sleuth it out. I have most of them. Yeah, pretty much. I think maybe there's a few of the older ones that I don't have, but then once it gets through the 90s, I don't really have any of those magazines so much, because a lot of times people don't keep them anymore. There's some magazines from but I mean, if you're gonna buy them. If you're going to be a subscriber, modern, a lot of times people don't save the magazines anymore. So it's harder actually to find sometimes the more modern ones than the older ones.
Well, I have quite a few of the ones from the 90s because, that was how we got the list. And a lot of those were based on what we were doing and, based on what we did. Or Romana would give me an article and say, here, this person's using a name. You need to do something about it.
Yeah, that's how you.
That was another
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
So, okay, so you had your website,
Mhm.
and then last night when you were talking with Kathy, you were talking about 2013 is when you decided to go on to Facebook.
Right.
So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that happened because I had a Pilates teacher. I'm not going to name her because I haven't talked to her to see if she'd be okay or not. But she was coming to me for PT, and we would talk. And I'd known her from before, and she trained through the USPA, and that. So she was doing what we were doing, and we started talking, and she started talking about all the stuff that was going on social media, and I hadn't been on. I didn't know. I wasn't really on Facebook. I didn't do any of that stuff. So I went on and I started to see, and it was like, oh, what do you know? They're saying a lot of things that just aren't really accurate or true.
Okay, like what about Pilates or?
Well, Pilates, about me, about all that. The same. A lot of the rhetoric that's been going on for 20 years, that I've been explaining in these last, these 30 and 30 days. A lot of that, my side of the story is coming out, and that was never there. And so now it is, and oh, he's a fraud. Oh, he got he got convicted of this, and he tried to trademark Pilates. And well, that's not all. It wasn't all accurate.
I have to say it would be very strange to turn on Facebook and be like, oh, let's just see what she's talking about, and then read all those things about yourself. Be like, what?
Well, and then I started commenting.
Uh-huh.
And and people didn't like that because, but I was like, well, this is not true. What do you mean it's not true? And I'm like, well, and I have the documents and I have the history, and I would, start to put it out there. And the other thing I noticed that almost the majority of what was being done and talked about was mostly contemporary. There wasn't really a lot of classical, and there might have been a few out there, but they weren't really standing up for classical. And I started to stand up for classical and talk about it and push it and say, this is important. What Romana taught, what Joe taught is important way before.
When you started coming onto Facebook, well, I have to say, I don't think that everybody didn't like what you were saying.
Oh, no, not everybody. I mean, but there was, the classical people really liked it because I was standing up and sticking up and explaining and going and talking about what it is. And, there was a lot of classical just follows the order. That's all they do. And that's just not how it is. I mean, if you really, if you study with Romana and you train with Romana, she modified, she varied, she, depending on the person and the system. So it wasn't really what was being taught. And a lot of that, I think, is what it appears is that the training programs that they were in, the contemporary programs, that's what they were told. That's what they were taught. And that's, well, we're different. We've added this. We changed this. We're doing all these different things. We brought in the science and then I asked for the science, and, there was never any. They all, a lot of people will say, well, the science, but they don't give me, saying science means nothing. So if you're going to use science, then that means there's an article, there's a study, there's something that has been published that you can then provide, and we can, then look at and discuss. And they didn't, they all wanted to say science, but nobody could provide it. And matter of fact, that led me to being, censored on one of the forums because I kept asking questions.
It's about science.
Yeah, right. And they're like, you're being a bully. And it's like, I'm not being a bully. I'm being professional. I'm asking you if you're going to make a claim, not opinion. It wasn't opinions. These were claims of science did this. And I'd be, okay, well, let bring it up and let's look at it. Let's be able to read it. Let's look at that study and see, is it really relevant to what we're doing and how we do what we do? And that's one of the beauties of, social, the beauties of social media and the drawbacks, right? The beauty is that, we can all discuss things. The drawback is a lot of people say stuff and then they don't have any backup and they just throw stuff out there. And, can you, if you read it on the internet, is it true? It's like, as a professor, guess what? You couldn't use Wiki. You couldn't use a lot of this stuff because it was not really factual all the time.
Yeah.
So and a lot of now, and that may be changing, but there was, in the beginning back then, especially, you couldn't use that kind of stuff. So I was just trying to bring my, having done, being a PhD, supervised, not total supervisor, but somebody that looked at the program and on the committee and asking the questions and trying to make sure it was done properly and scientifically and all that. I tried to bring that, to the internet and the social media. And and it just didn't really work too well because people wouldn't want to back it up, and I would ask two or three times.
Part of the problem, I think, with I guess you could say social media, but maybe just like written text, is that like tone and facial expression, body language, it's all like not there.
Right.
So people basically just have to put their own judgment on what you're saying. So if somebody is being, also I think, for teachers, we're basically always the one who's right in the room, right? It's like we have our students, we're the one in the room. It's like we're in our studio.
Is that how I am when I teach?
No, I'm talking about the teachers.
I understand that, but you're saying the teachers, but that's not, you see, that's the difference. When I teach, I'm not always right. It's like, okay, I ask questions. You I ask questions.
That's not...
That's the learning process.
But
that's a much better learning.
Like we've talked about before in these other days, that's not common.
Yes.
Okay? So I think like if someone is writing about whatever they teach, or they're saying, I'm going to base this on science, and they're writing it in the forum, that person is usually not used to being like challenged in front of people, especially not in front of their peers, Right. So I think that like when people are reading your challenges or your questions, is that they become defensive because they don't see your face, they don't hear your voice. So it's I think that's part of the disconnect that ends up happening in the forums, especially.
Well, it's always been like that in science. Back in the 15, 16, 17, 1800s, you had people, put an article out, and then all these people would attack it, and then they go back and they write each other letters, and they go back and forth, and all this stuff that goes on today still went on back then.
I love that it exists still, though.
Right.
The
well, it still
artifacts.
is, but and you can read those letters, but that's part. That was part of it as well. I mean, and not everybody was nice, and not everybody liked what somebody did, and a lot of times if you had something that was what they weren't taught or told or used to, then it was totally foreign, and they attacked it because it's not what they wanted to do. But we also know from history that over time, some of those people who came up with the best ideas that were attacked in the beginning became very famous later on because they were correct. Yeah, their observation and what they do was correct. So, and that's all I'm trying to do. And I get it. People on social media don't always like my MO because I'm direct, I'm forward. And I will ask a question that is relevant, and if it's scientific. But I'll also ask questions in relationship to, if it looks like somebody's trying to do a hustle, I'll call them out on it. I'm like, exactly what are you doing? Because there's a lot of hustle and stuff that goes on social media on these platforms where people are just trying to, oh, come and do my this and this, and and I'm like, well, how does that work? And where, what is that? And or like. They'll give you a teeny little bit, and then they go, well, DM me, and I'll send you my information. It's like if you really want to share, then share. But and that was my, it's almost like when the pandemic started, there were a few Pilates teachers that totally took advantage of that, and that was one of the reasons why I asked you. I said, do you want to do a weekly, Instagram live reading for the community about the issues that are current, that people are talking about on social media and having issues with and problems with? That was one of the reasons why I did it, because there are a lot of, and Joe has, there's that quote in, I think it's Your Health, where he talks about hocus pocus, and all the unscrupulous people and this and that. I don't think he realized that was what was going to happen with Pilates, eventually. But all that stuff he said, that still happens today. And when I see that, I say something.
Well, before we get to Instagram, I think, I remember when you appeared on Facebook, and I was reading your comments, and it wasn't just me. Like I said, there were a lot of other people that we are still friends with since then. But that when you were commenting, I was like, I really like what he's saying. Like, you just sort of presented like a different perspective than what was normally said. But it not just a different perspective, but almost like a completely other way of looking at something that really sparked my interest. And at the same time, around that same time, you did an interview on Pilates Anytime, and she asked you questions about your past and stuff and all this thing, and your answers were I had just never heard you answer those questions before, and your answers made so much sense. I was like, wow, that just makes complete sense to me.
Right.
So that's, that's actually how you and I met. It was because when you came onto Facebook, then I sent you a message and I said, oh, hi, do you want to come do a workshop at my studio? Yeah. So, it was, me, and then, like I said, a lot of people that we still do a lot of things with, and, we've met in person since then and gotten to be friends with, or like all sort of took to what you were saying and found a lot of value in it.
Well, Ramana was always about Pilates is common sense. Right?
Uh-huh.
And I've spent 30 years trying to understand it better and explain. And then I've also spent 25 years as a professor and a teacher, and I'm trying to, come back. But at the same time, when people start to say things that are, I want backup. I want to know what you're talking about. And if not, and I'll keep asking. And
right.
if you consider that being a bully, then I guess I'm a bully. I don't know. I mean, that's not me. My understanding of bully was a lot different than that. It was like,
Yeah, ask Joe who the bully or
right.
what a bully is. Like,
right.
he got his eye poked out as a
right.
child by
yeah.
a rock.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
it's like, whoa.
Right. There's a whole different, reality there.
Yeah.
And, the issue is, I think, is when you look at social media, it does strive on controversy. Right?
Yes.
So,
it's like TV.
Well,
or the news.
Well, yes, but
yeah.
but even social media, it's like if somebody says something, and then I respond, and they respond, and I respond, everyone's
watching.
What's that?
Yeah,
Let's
totally.
See, let me watch that. So there's times when I respond, and there's times that I don't. And I've had I've seen threads go to hundreds of back and forth things.
Yeah.
And what I always say is, listen. Provide what you're saying, let's all read it, and then we can all decide whether that is relevant or not. Not just because you say science, because like the body's different. Well, show me where. I mean, I can show you anatomy books from the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, 2000, and if you look at the anatomy, there's slight variations and there may be some, anomalies and this and that, but it's pretty much the same thing. So how did the body change?
Right.
It doesn't, and if you look at the, books from the early 1900s, late 1800s, talking about, hygiene and posture and all that stuff, and sitting at a desk with poor posture and then sitting up properly, well, that's what they're teaching, it's still being taught today. It hasn't changed. So that's the issue. There's all this stuff that people try to say, or, when they come up and there's one article that's been written, like neutral spine. And then everybody, a few people in the Pilates world jump on that, and then it becomes this whole big thing. And it's already, and now that it's 10 or 15 years out, it's being debunked left and right. So that's the problem, because you can't take one article. Science isn't one article. Science is you have a hypothesis, you do a study, and hopefully you prove yourself wrong. Not right, but you prove yourself wrong. And then somebody else does the exact same experiment and gets pretty much the same answer. Mm-hmm. And then 2 or 3 or 4 people do that. And then it becomes a standard, more like when they call it like it's a law, because then, that's what happens.
Right.
Well, what happens today now, and it's even, less, it's like somebody does a study and everybody jumps on it without any of that other stuff going on, and that becomes what the standard is, and it shouldn't be done that way.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's Facebook.
Some people claiming to be bullied are actually bullying others. Well, that's for sure. I've seen that, more in the last year especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Neutral spine, that came from the fitness industry after years of tucking.
No, it didn't. Neutral spine comes from physical therapy. There was a couple PTs in Australia looking at that, and that's where that really started to come from, the neutral spine. The fitness industry latched onto it much more than the Pilates world did. Stott did, and a few other people, but that really didn't come from from that.
Angela said, my whole mat training was based on that neutral spine thing in 2006. Oh dear, LOL. Then let go of that, the body changes.
Yeah. And look, there's, the life is about full range as much as possible. Otherwise, you can't do things. And if you do full flexion and full extension and you go back and forth, when you stop, where do you end up? In the middle.
Uh-huh.
So, and again, there's nothing wrong with, you can stabilize in the middle. There's nothing wrong with that. But trying to stabilize in the middle all the time is not normal.
Well, the thing I don't get is I'm like, we should go back to talking about social media. But the thing about that is that I'm like, okay, so you want to stabilize in the middle, but you don't want to stabilize anywhere else that takes you to the middle.
Right.
So how do you get stronger that way? You don't.
Well, and if you look at Pilates does everything in flexion, extension, and in neutral.
Right.
So he was way ahead of the.
I just have to see. What does your shirt say? Oh,
Paul Taylor Dance Company.
I couldn't see. It was backwards and small in the back. I was just kept wondering this whole time. Okay, so
some of the swag I got for working at the company.
Oh, cool. So okay, so back to social media. So you were on Facebook. You started on Facebook, and then so I know you have a forum because I'm one of the admin on it. So
well, not
tell
only
us
that,
about
but the top picture I asked you to write. Here it comes. When she was doing it, I said, "Can you make me a picture for this forum?" And that's the picture. So she drew that. That's Elaine's artwork.
Yes, thank you.
So that's on there. So again, that was great.
Yeah, that was fun.
But and that was it. The reason why I started that is because I got censored, and then I went
in a different forum.
And because I asked too many questions, is what I was told. So I said, okay, well, and I'm going to start my own. So I started my own, and I posted on that forum that I had started my own, and they're like, oh, well, that's against our rules, so we're going to throw you off of this forum. I'm like, okay.
You were like, well, I started my own anyway,
right,
so whatever.
Done, right. Well, that's the it's like, you censor, and then they find any way, because, there are some people who didn't like what I do, and I get it. You don't have to like what I do, but,
Well, it's like you said before, it's that, it's like not everybody, that was one of the things that actually you sort of mentioned at the time back then when you were commenting and I was sort of getting to know who you were, and you would say things like that. You would be like, it's not, everything isn't always going to be like you get along all the time. Sometimes you're going to disagree with people.
Right.
And like, so that to me just made so much sense because of course that's true. But I think there's like pressure on social media to like be like everybody's friend in a way, or be everybody's like bestie, no matter what. Even if you don't agree, you can't say that you don't agree. You're just supposed to say nothing if you don't agree, or you're just supposed to be like, oh, that's so nice.
If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But
yeah, but why?
But it's not that. So what? It's everything always has to be nice. Why? I mean, that's not the world.
I mean, it doesn't have to be not nasty, but it just there's variables, and it's just completely normal to be like, I actually don't agree with you.
I disagree, and I'm going to state that I disagree.
Yeah.
And that's not, and you may not think that is nice, but that's not mean.
Right.
It's not.
And I don't not like you.
It's not a battle. It's dialogue, and if you want to have the dialogue, that's important to do the dialogue.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you do the dialogue, then everybody that's paying attention, they can see what I say, they can see what you say, and then they can make a decision. That's what, that's sort of like what the democracy is, right? We live in this world, but the problem is, it's gotten worse, right? We see that in the government and everything else, but, it's gotten, so it's like you're either with me or you're not. If you're not with me, you're, and then they block you and they do this and they do that stuff. And so it's, when people do stuff like that, it's much more divisive, and they split the community even more by, going into that negative all the time.
It can just be that some people think one thing, and some
we can
people
agree.
think
We
something
can
else.
agree to disagree.
And it's just on this one topic.
Right.
It doesn't mean that I disagree with everything that you say or do, and that I like totally don't like you and all this stuff. It's just like a difference of opinion.
That's
so.
It. But like you said, in social media, because you don't see me laugh and smile and put my eyes or bring Joe. I don't have him now, but all the little things I can do. And don't forget, we have a new guest coming fairly soon.
I will forget that.
Yes, okay. But basically, that's the thing, and having fun. And we, that's what I, with the things that we did this past year during, or more than past year during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's
all the, the free Instagram lives. It was to provide information, but also to make people laugh and have, and come together and realize that there is, support and help.
Yeah. So we can talk about that. So that's Facebook. Well, you have the Pilates questions forum. I want to add a little bit about that actually. So basically, when we started that, I don't even remember when that was.
I think it was around 2017.
Okay.
About.
All right. Yeah, and then
maybe 16, but it was 16 or 17.
Well, that's a great place for Pilates teachers to learn about Pilates history, because we've posted a lot, and you and I, and then a lot of other people too, who were the admin and the forum, and the people a lot of people have commented over the years and shared history. We've done like a lot of things, like we had trivia for a long time. We would ask Pilates history trivia, and you've actually shared a lot of archival information on that forum. So that's a great resource if anybody's not in that forum. You can
I would
join.
fill in the blank, and you'd have to find, letter at a time, and people would guess it. Then the quote would come out, and then it would be a quote from Joe.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was very competitive, I must add.
I know, and you always like to win, the queen.
Who doesn't like to win? I know. See, why is that always a thing? It's like, you like to win. It's like, of course I do.
Who likes to lose?
Who likes to lose?
Right,
Yeah.
I get it. I can't wait till I lose.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just usually is not how it
I'm
happens.
totally cool with losing.
Right.
It doesn't affect me in any way.
Elaine was bullied by a puppet every Friday night for a year. No, I don't think so.
No, Joe and I are cool.
She was laughing all the time.
Yeah, we're totally down.
She was.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Like, other times, like, what did he just say?
Okay, so now we can talk about Instagram. So you're on Facebook and you're on Instagram. Are you on any other social media platforms? You're not on Twitter.
Well, I have a Twitter account, but
But
I
you
never
don't
do
regularly
it. I don't.
tweet.
No, I don't. I'm not a tweeter. I have TikTok, and I've done one or two things, but it's not really what I. It's just not something
I'm not a TikToker either. It's too much.
Right.
It's like so
So
much work. So okay, so you're on Instagram and
I like to win. So happy with my raffle win. There you go.
oh yeah, that's good. All right, so now on Instagram you have the Pilates source page. That's this page. You have
Yep.
your own personal
Yep.
page, and you have the Pilates posters.
Yep.
That's another page for.
And then your Pilates studio page
Yeah.
too. So
And Pilates at the Pillow.
and Pilates at the Pillow. So there's all the things that I'm currently doing is there's an Instagram account.
Cool.
And a lot of times what I'll do is when I come up with something, I will then share it everywhere, and also all the other forums that the other thing I've done is all the webinars. Each webinar I do, I've created a Instagram account for that, so that we could all interact and talk. And then when I do new things, I just post on that as well. So sometimes it might be a little bit too much, but it is what it is.
So you're very active.
I try to be.
Yeah.
Not as active as you, but I try to be.
Well, I mean, I think that you use social media as a way to spread the word about not only what you're doing, but also just about Pilates history. I mean, I've seen you
Right.
share a lot of archival pictures, and then you put like a quote, and you share things that I mean, since you own them, I haven't seen them before, like the color pictures,
Right.
and a bunch of other stuff. So that's really neat.
Well,
That's a
and
good
that,
way
and,
to
you know,
use
and
social
that's the other
media.
thing for people to realize is that, a lot of people, part of the problem with social media as well, though, is that, it's no longer 15 minutes, it's 15 seconds.
Uh-huh.
And most people don't scroll down. So, like, if you don't go on for a day or two, if I posted something,
Yeah.
they'll never even see it. So if you're not repetitive to a certain degree, every couple of days before, then a lot of people will miss it.
Right.
And so, but at the same time, if you're interested in some history, and there's a question that comes up, type that question into Instagram or Facebook, especially on the sites, and 9 times out of 10, we more likely than not have discussed it at some point, and you'll be able to go back and read those things.
Especially in the Pilates questions form.
Right.
Yeah. So now we're rounding up about 3:00 right now.
Okay.
But my last question for you is in regards to other people's social media pages. If somebody wants to promote Pilates history or post a picture that's Joe, archival picture, how can they do that? How can
Well,
that be-
there's a couple things, right?
Okay.
There is archival stuff that's in the public domain. A lot of the articles and things like that, pictures
Mm-hmm.
from those articles you can do. There are a few other things that are out there, but the majority of the archival stuff, at least of Joe that I know of, it's either I or Chuck.
Chuck Rappaport.
Chuck Rappaport. You found there's the pictures that you found from the library. So there's some other stuff that's out there that people can use. But if you want to use either mine or Chuck, you need to contact us and ask. And Chuck has a website that does all that. So I'm thinking about maybe doing something similar where, you can look at the picture, and you can, depending on how you want to use it, there's a price to do that.
So if somebody finds a picture, they don't know whose it is, they want to use it, what should they do?
They should contact I or Chuck and see if it's one of ours, and if it is, then we can let them, either he or I can let them know what it is.
So they need to ask you.
Yeah, well, ask, and if it's something that's non-for-profit and it's something that I believe in, and it's really historical and more closer to what Joe related, if it's something with physio balls and TheraBands and all this other stuff, and they want to use a picture of Joe, I'm probably going to say no, because that's not what Joe did. So if it's related to Joe and it's that, and if it's a business, then I'll license it. I have
So people have an option.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, so it's not like...
people have always had an option. You just have to ask.
All right, so thanks so much for joining us today.
Yep,
Tomorrow, we have a special guest joining us. It'll be Norton Owen. He is the Pilates, or he's actually the archivist at Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival and a friend of Sean's. And Kathy will be interviewing Norton and Sean tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and they'll be talking about Joe's history at Jacob's Pillow and
My history.
Sean's history, and what Sean and Norton have both done over the last few years to preserve Pilates history at Jacob's Pillow. So I really look forward to that.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Appreciate
and
it.
we'll see you tomorrow. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.